So, this final chapter of Habakkuk, Habakkuk chapter 3, I've labeled this prayer, praise, and peace. Prayer, praise, and peace. So, that's what we find has happened here to Habakkuk. He started out with question after question after question. He transitioned into that standing firm and waiting on the Lord. And now he is going to pray. He's brought to prayer, as I pray again that many of us are as we contemplate the greatness, majesty, the wisdom, and the knowledge of God. So we see the prayer of Habakkuk the prophet according to the Shigionoth. So I don't know exactly what that word means. It seems to be a word associated with perhaps musical instruments or perhaps just a general involvement where it fits in the liturgy of Israel. So this is a prayer as well as the book that was revered by the ancient Israelites, was part of their worship, perhaps a reminder during the exile, as you'll see here, that God has plans for them yet. So we see that prayer here in verses 1 and 2. And he calls on the Lord to revive your work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. So he's anticipating what God is going to follow through with the Chaldeans. And he's praying, don't forget about us, revive us. Let me stop there for a moment. We talk a lot about revival in our own time. We pray for revival in the United States. Something happens at a relatively I was going to say obscure, but Ashbury College in is it Kentucky, a church or certainly not a place that I would consider to be Orthodox Christianity. We see crazy things happening there, so we immediately start thinking there's revival. What revival is it's a rededication among God's people to God himself. That's what he's talking about here. He's not talking about this outpouring of charismatic gifts. He's talking about a settled dependence and living by faith, which he talked about in chapter 2. So that's what his prayer here is for God to remember his people and to revive his people in the middle of this exile that's coming up here. And then in verses 3 through 15, we see this moving into praise. He sees God. Remember, he is standing on the parapet. He's standing on the walls of Jerusalem, and in this vision, in this oracle, that he sees the Lord, and he says his radiance is like the sunshine. He has rays flashing from his hand, in verse 4. And there is hiding, and there is the hiding of his power. Before him goes pestilence, and plague comes after him. He stood and surveyed the earth. He looked and startled the nations. Yet the perpetual mountains were shattered. The ancient hills collapsed. His ways are everlasting. So we see these allusions, plague and pestilence, to what he's done in the past in Exodus. It's kind of a reminder, it's almost a down payment that God is going to do this again and again in the future, that it's proof that he's going to do that. And again, he sees him approaching Jerusalem. He sees him coming. And where's he coming from? He says, the ancient hills collapsed. I saw the tents of Cushan under distress. The curtains of the land of Midian were trembling. He goes on. Let's see. He's coming from, can't find it now, but I think he says he's coming from Teman. He is, his chariots of salvation, his bow was made bare. He's alluding to God showing up here. He's going to appear, and he's coming as a warrior, and he's coming to rescue his people, is what he's doing here. He is marching to the Mount of Olives, verses 4 and 5. Let me back up here. He is approaching Jerusalem here. He's going to come up to the city as he's promised he would be. He would do. And he shows up and rescues his people. He says, "You went forth for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You struck the head of the house of evil to lay him open from thigh to neck." Serious attack that God is making here. And he is going to bring his people to that place of restoration. These illusions of pestilence and his power, imagine these things in the hand of God. I mean, we just went through a couple of years ago COVID and how that disrupted, closed down nations, shut borders, disrupted supply chains, kept people locked up in the house. And that was what I consider to be a relatively minor pestilence. Imagine what the Lord is going to bring on the earth and the effect that that's going to have. He is coming, and he is going to bring deliverance to his people. God shows up. The whole creation trembles in verses 6 and 7. Verses 8 and 9 talk about defeating his opponents with weapons of war that are dedicated to him and are made particularly or unusually effective against them. In verse 10 to 11, we see the cosmic aspects of this, that the whole cosmos is groaning, and Romans 8:19 kind of backs that up, that the whole creation groans in anticipation of the return of the Lord. So as we see these things, you can imagine Israel in exile being encouraged. Israel in exile, who are going to live by faith and not the circumstances that they're in, are exercising their faith that God is going to come and rescue them and reestablish them. We know he's going to do that. We have so much more revelation about the return of the Lord and how he is going to restore his people permanently to their land. And how much more should we live by faith? How much more should we live in light of the coming that's promised here? I pray, brothers and sisters, that this exposition, this walking through your reading of Habakkuk, has resulted in you having great faith, even though we are living in tumultuous times, even though we are living in times when evil abounds all around us. We can live in expectation that evil will be judged, and that the Lord will come back and establish righteousness and justice on the earth. Be encouraged, be edified. God bless you, brothers and sisters. See you in the book of Zephaniah.